All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sean Rogers. I am the product manager for our Nebula cloud management platform. So that's what we're here to talk about today. This is a relatively short presentation. This is sort of our introduction to Nebula. For those of you that are new partners, or for those of you who have been getting pestered by your salesperson about it for a while and are finally wanting to learn a little bit more about it. As we go through today, use the question and answer part of the Zoom interface to send in questions. I will do my best to answer them as we go through. But anything that I can't answer or that I miss when it first comes in, we will answer at the end of today's presentation. So go ahead and get started here. So I guess the first thing is, what is Nebula? So Nebula is the first full stack cloud networking solution for SMB. So what does that mean? That means you're managing all of your network devices through the cloud rather than having to go on site or set up VPNs or port forwards for remote access. Everything is done through the cloud. Now, the pioneer in this space for cloud management was Meraki. So we saw what Meraki was doing back in the day, and we said, hey, that's a good idea. But the problem was that Meraki was marketed at the enterprise and was really expensive. And we said, hey, you know what? We could probably do something similar, tailor it to the SMB space, and make it affordable. And that's exactly what we did. So Nebula was launched all the way back in 2016, hence what we're saying we were the first. We beat everyone else, but in a lot of cases by a lot of years, to having a cloud-hosted management platform. And because we've been doing it since 2016, and it's been purpose-built for cloud management, it's not a local area controller that's being hosted in the cloud. This is a purpose-built solution. And because of that, it's highly polished, it's optimized, it's got a fantastic set of features. So this is just showing here, the type of stuff that goes into deploying a new network. I won't go through all of those slides here, but the idea behind Nebula is to eliminate some of these sections, and in other cases, streamline or reduce the amount of time or effort that goes into setting this stuff up. Installing equipment, no configuration is required when you're using Nebula of the device itself. You simply take it out of the box, plug it in, and go. You don't need to monitor things. Our Nebula Cloud handles storing logs for you. It handles analysis, alerts, things like that. Remote access is provided through the cloud. No needing to set that type of stuff up. So we'll go through some of the key features here. So Nebula was designed to get you up and running in just a few minutes. You simply go to nebula.zyxel.com, log in, or create an account and then log in. And then you can just click on there, go ahead and create a new organization. So an organization is what we call your customers. So for each of your customers, you will set up an organization for them. And then under that organization, you can add sites. We've got a number of wizards set up in there to walk you through some of the basic configuration, including pre-filling in some of those items for you. So, you go through the wizard, it's just a few steps, you click finish, and that's all you need to do to get your switches, gateway, and access point up and running. Maybe not configured the way you want them, but they'll be up and running for you, talking to the cloud and communicating. So I mentioned when it comes to setting up your device, when it's on site, all you do is plug it in and go. And that's because you don't have to take it out of the box to configure it. Because we're configuring it in the cloud, you can log into the Nebula cloud at any point and start doing your configurations. So even before you've necessarily finalized which hardware you're going to buy for this customer, you can be setting up things like the SSIDs, certain policy rules, things like that. Now, once you do have the hardware shipped to you, you use our mobile app to scan the QR code, which can be found on the outside of the box. It can also be found on the belly label of most of our products. You scan that, assign the product to your customer and which site from that customer you're going to be sending this to, and then you just ship it on out to the site. Once it gets plugged in, it will reach out to the cloud, see it's being managed in Nebula, see which customer and which site it's been assigned to, and will automatically download the configuration that's been set up for that customer and site. We had a quick question here from Steven saying, will we go over the different licenses? So the answer to that is yes. The sort of back half of this presentation, we will talk about licenses, specifically the Nebula licenses. I'm not going to go through the security licenses. So the security licenses are those licenses that are part of our firewall security gateways. And they're pretty much the same whether you're talking Nebula or standalone. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but we will talk about all the Nebula related licenses. Continuing on here with the presentation. So in order to use Nebula, there is no additional hardware or software that you need to purchase. There's no cloud keys, there's no CNAs, there's no software that needs to be loaded onto a server or a PC at the customer's site. The Nebula agent itself is built into all of our Nebula compatible hardware. It has the ability to reach out to the internet. So as long as you are providing internet access to your network devices, we can go through that. So in general, you don't need to configure anything special on the gateway to allow traffic out. We'll traverse NAT, we'll traverse double NAT. So as long as it's there. Now, for those of you that are really locking down a network, we do have online. You can search for it. We do have a list of the ports and that we use to be able to communicate with the cloud. So Stephen has another question here. Can you cover how we can provision a router firewall using Nebula if the client uses a static IP or PPOE that requires authentication? So when it comes to your router, if it needs a fixed IP on the WAN port, you will need to log in and configure that device locally first. And we do have the ability to do that. If your LAN requires static IP, same thing. All of our devices will allow you to log in and set that static IP address and other information that they need there locally. So in those cases, you would have to locally configure them. Our suggestion is enable DHCP, at least temporarily during the setup, plug in the Nebula device, get them communicating with the cloud, and then go into the cloud, set the static IP information through the cloud, and then disable DHCP so everything reverts back to static IP. That would be the easiest way to do it, but if for some reason you can't do that with your customers, then yes, you can still log into a local GUI, even when being cloud managed, and be able to set up that IP information to get out to the cloud. But that's the only information that's made available for you to configure in cloud mode if you're configuring it directly. So with Nebula, anywhere you've got access to the internet and a web browser, you have access to all of your customers and all of their sites. No special software required. So some of the features here that you will find in Nebula is easy guest access. Whether we're talking about just providing guest access to visitors, such as vendors who may be visiting your customer. If you are setting up something like a coffee shop or a hotel where you're doing restricted access, we have the ability to do that too through Nebula. Now, the guest access functionality is built into the access points themselves. You do not need to use Nebula compatible switches and routers to be able to provide guest access. And while it is best to always set up your guest network on its own VLAN, we do have the ability to provide guest isolation even without VLANs. We have our own feature called Layer 2 isolation, which basically the AP will not allow traffic from the clients to any Layer 2 device on your network unless the MAC address for that device is part of a whitelist. So that way you can simply, if you only want them to have access to the internet, you provide them the gateway's MAC address, and they won't be able to send traffic to any other LAN devices on the network. If you have a shared printer that you want to give your guests access to, or maybe a storage share that you want them to be able to upload their PowerPoints to, you can add those to the whitelist for you. And when it comes to logging in through the guest network, we have a lot of flexibility. You can simply have people agree to a terms of service page before they go out. You can require the login with a username and password you provide them. You can set it up so they can register their own username and password to log in. You can even link to Facebook and integrate with Facebook in order for them to be able to log in through that captive portal. On the wireless side of things, we've got all the features you would expect: WPA2 and WPA3 enterprise security, 802.11r, KV, etc. for fast roaming and things like that. And we have our smart mesh functionality. So smart mesh will automatically create a mesh between access points that don't have a hardwired connection. And it is a multi-route mesh. So if something happens to the mesh, one of the devices that's connecting to goes offline, it will automatically search and find another unit to connect to. It is not set to a static route through the mesh. In addition to that, we have a mode that you can enable. So if a device that is currently plugged into an Ethernet cable, if something happens to that Ethernet cable, it will automatically put itself into mesh mode until that cable connection is restored. And on most of or many of our APs, we have the ability to enable a bridge mode. So the smart mesh, in addition to providing mesh to wireless users, can also be used to bridge connections together, such as when linking two different buildings together. Stephen, I'll get to that question towards the end. So on the switch side of things, we've got some intelligence there that we would expect. For those of you that are familiar with Zyxel switches, we have that intelligent power over Ethernet, which can free up additional budget from your PoE budget there for more devices. So you can connect more devices on the same amount of PoE switch budget. We have a number of protection things there. Friendly, easy to set up ACL rules, VLAN configurations, 802.1x authentication, loop guard, DHCP server guard, so you don't have to worry about somebody setting up their own DHCP server on your network, and a virtual switch stack, the ability to configure ports on different switches simultaneously. So all configuration and all updates are done over the air, meaning you log into the cloud to be able to do that. Firmware updates are set up through the cloud. You can schedule those firmware updates on a per customer basis. So, if you want those firmware updates applied, Saturday night at 3 a.m., so Sunday morning, you can do that, whatever their schedule is, where there may be some disruption while firmware updates may require devices to reboot, you can schedule that for them. On the security side of things on the gateway, we make VPNs very easy for you. You simply go in, choose the sites you want to connect together, choose the topology you want to use, and we handle everything else for you. For remote users using L2TP, we have the ability to email a script to those users, and I will automatically configure the built-in client on Mac devices, iOS devices, and Windows devices. So Nebula was built from the ground up to manage multiple customers and multiple sites, which is different than some of the other SMB cloud solutions that are out there, which are primarily based on cloud hosting a local area controller software. So it's really easy to jump between clients, jump between sites, see what's going on. So Stephen has a question here going back to, does the VPN software use the native software or Mac PC, or is it a separate download? So in the case of L2TP, that is using the built-in client. So we can email them a script that will configure the built-in client on those devices, which is why we can't do it on Android, because Android is sort of like the Wild West and there's too many variations. But for Windows, Mac, and iOS, that script should handle the configuration for them. But that is L2TP. So for those of you that are looking for more secure encryption, or you're looking for something different like our SSL client, our SSL client is its own piece of software. We have an IPsec software that you can also purchase, but if you're using the L2TP that's built in, our script handles that. There we go. So organization-wide status, you choose your customer. They've got lots of sites. We take you to this view here where you're able to see a list of basically all of their sites and get a snapshot view of what's going on there. We have Google Maps integration, so you can get a visual representation of where each site is on the Google map. When you log into a customer's site, you get this view right here. So it's a dashboard that's got all the information you would expect from a cloud-hosted solution. All of these widgets on here are customizable. You can choose which ones you see and don't see, but it can show you stuff like what's your PoE draw versus your PoE budget, how many users are on that wireless network, are any of your devices offline. If you are using our security gateways, we can break down bandwidth utilization by application, not just by device, but by individual applications. So you can see, wait a minute, if somebody's streaming a lot of 4K Netflix on this network, is that's what eating things up? Are people watching a lot of YouTube videos? We can tell you that. So this is just showing you here just a view of the wireless devices. So this will show you who's been online, who's currently offline, users both wireless and wired, et cetera, and give you a little background information on them to help you troubleshoot what's going on there. On the switches, again, same thing. We've got a dedicated view, makes it really easy to see what's going on your networks. We will show you the ports on your switches, and you can easily see which ports are currently have something connected to them, which ones don't, which ones are providing PoE, and the speed of the connection to them. We can show you visual graphs of bandwidth utilization over time, etc. Port configuration is really easy. You just choose the ports you want to configure. It pulls up a single screen where then you can set up things like VLANs, RSTP, broadcast limits, things like that, and automatically set them across the multiple ports that you've selected. And basically everything I've talked about up to this point is free. This is another thing that sets us apart from all the other cloud solutions out there. Even TP-Link's cloud-hosted Omada requires you pay per device to be able to use it. So Nebula is free. It has been free since 2016. And it gives you the ability to manage as many customers as you want, as many sites as you want, and as many devices as you want. I know, for instance, when Netgear first launched their cloud, I think they gave you 10 devices for free, and then they revised it to, I think, 2, and then eliminated that. So for us, as many as you want using the free version of Nebula. All of the core features of the products are there. We do have some optional licenses, which we will talk about, which unlock additional features that are primarily aimed at those of you that are providing managed services. So we'll go through and talk about those a little bit here in just a minute. So when it comes to Nebula, our Nebula products are what we call Nebula Flex. When we first launched Nebula, we copied the Meraki model, where Cisco, if you wanted traditional management, you bought Cisco. If you wanted cloud management, you bought Meraki. And we just found that was too confusing for you. It's easier to standardize on one product, irregardless of whether your customer is going to be cloud managed or not. So that's where we invented Nebula Flex. Basically, with Nebula Flex, any device that's Nebula Flex has the ability to be cloud managed or can be managed and used in the traditional standalone mode where you would log into a GUI or use some other network tool like SNMP to monitor and manage the device. So that way you can standardize on certain products and use them for all of your customers, whether you'll manage them in the cloud or not. Converting a device into a cloud managed device is really simple. You simply scan that QR code I was talking about earlier, assign it to a customer in the Nebula cloud in a site, and within a few minutes, that device will automatically reboot into cloud mode and download the configuration that's supposed to be used for that customer and site. If at any point you want to take it out of the cloud and put it back into standalone mode, you simply log into Nebula, remove the device from the cloud, and in a few minutes, it'll automatically reboot itself and go back to its default standalone configuration. Now, key here, like I just mentioned, to standalone configuration. The configurations do not transfer back and forth between modes. Nebula gets its configuration from the cloud. Standalone will always start with a default config that you can then either upload a new one to it or configure it. So there's no conversion back and forth. They're two separate systems, and some of the implementations on some of the features are a little bit different. So we can't easily port back and forth between the different modes. So just to show you here, we've got a lot of products. Rodelio, I don't know, I'm probably not pronouncing that right. I think I just answered your question, so I'm going to go ahead and clear that out of the queue. So here's just giving you an idea of all of our products that can be managed in the Nebula Cloud. As mentioned before, it's full stack. We have access points, we have switches, we have lightweight security gateways, we have full featured, Sonic Wall, Fortinet type security UTM appliances. Those can be managed in the cloud. We even have an outdoor LTE router that you can manage with the Nebula Cloud here. So the primary difference between these two series here is the ones up on the top are what we call, whoops, get my laser pointer here, these are our Nebula Flex products. So it can manage in the cloud or standalone. Down here on the bottom are our Nebula Flex Pro products. So all that means is that they come bundled with our optional Pro Pack license. So when you buy these devices on the bottom of the screen, it includes a 1-year Pro Pack license that you can use that is locked down to that device. Now on the APs, it also unlocks a third mode. So on APs, if you buy a Nebula Flex Pro product, it also unlocks the ability to be managed by a local controller. So if you want to do a local managed wireless network, you would still buy a Nebula Flex Pro product, even though you're not using the Pro license. And then, of course, also just going back here to these Nebula Flex products, you can always buy Pro licenses separately and add them to them. These ones down here, it just comes bundled with the device. So let's go through here, understanding Nebula licensing. So the free version of Nebula we refer to as Base Pack. And then we have Plus Pack and Pro Pack. So if your licenses, if you're using Plus or Pro Pack and your licenses expire, we don't do like some of the other vendors and lock you out of the product. It simply falls back to the base pack, the free version, until you add the licenses back in that are required to have it upgrade back to Plus or Pro Pack. Now, the key thing here is, in order to upgrade from the free version to Plus or Pro and take advantage of those features, every device in that organization needs to have a valid license. If any devices do not have a valid license, you will not be able to convert the Nebula organization from free to Plus or Pro. So that's per organization. So again, organization is our term for your customers. So that means that if you have a customer that you want to upgrade one of their sites, all devices on all of their sites have to be upgraded or have to have a license in order to upgrade them. If you have a customer, it's rare, but if you have a customer where certain sites need Pro Pack, for instance, and certain sites do not, what you would do is split that into 2 organizations. One organization for that customer for those sites that don't need Pro Pack, and then one organization for that customer with just those sites in it that need the Pro Pack features. And that's how you would handle that. Now, when licenses expire, we send you a ridiculous number of email notifications, so you can't say you didn't know what was happening. But we also give you a 15-day grace period after those licenses expire before we drop back down to the free version. So you've got plenty of time to get licenses on there if you want to continue doing it. Also in Nebula, if you want to do co-termination, basically all the licenses expire at a certain time, we do have a wizard in the Nebula interface where you just go in, you tell it when you would like everything to expire, and it will print out a list for you of how many licenses and what type you need to buy, which you can then provide to distribution and they can get those for you. We can provide the licenses in an Excel sheet that you simply import into Nebula and it'll automatically distribute them across the devices on that site. And I guess I skipped it there. I went a little too fast. So again, the optional licenses for Nebula are Plus and Pro. Plus is sort of our lightweight license. And the main thing that it's getting you, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth on a future slide, but the main thing it's getting you is email and push notifications when devices go offline and reports. Pro Pack unlocks a lot of additional features, which we'll talk a little bit more later, including starting right now with this slide right here. So one of the features that Pro Pack unlocks for you is machine learning for your wireless network. So we basically monitor the quality of wireless connections on a per client basis. And we generate this report, which shows you, which times and users were having connectivity issues, which ones were not, etc. And we monitor this for up to 30 days. And then we can use machine learning to automatically tweak certain wireless settings to compensate for any issues that we're seeing on the wireless network. So instead of you having to go in there and tweak, disconnection, signal strengths and stuff like that, or bandwidth, channel bandwidth utilization, we can do all of that automatically for you with the Pro Pack. If you're doing IPTV over your switches, we have a smart IPTV report, which is part of the Pro Pack, which will basically monitor the channels that are being streamed, and we will be able to notice that there are certain types of errors like drop packets, and our AI will then give you suggestions as to what settings to change to try to solve those issues. ProPack also unlocks additional IGMP snooping settings that aren't available in the free version. And we have the ability to generate an automatic topology view. You can see here, basically, we will automatically draw out for you which Nebula devices are connected to which other Nebula devices. So it's something that may be handy if you're trying to troubleshoot an issue. It's a site you set up a year or two ago. You don't remember what's connected to what. Simply log into Nebula. It will show you which AP is connected to which switch, which is connected to which gateway, etc. So that's it for the brief overview of some of the ProPack features. I do have a slide coming up where we sort of go through all of the features of Plus and Pro, or all the key features of Plus and Pro. Probably the most boring slide in this presentation. And we will get to that though for you, for those looking for a little bit more detail. And it is something that you can download right now from our website. So we have our MSP management license. So the MSP, there we go. Slides acting weird. So the MSP license is basically a license for those of you that are operating an MSP, a managed services provider. So this is not assigned to individual devices. This license is not assigned to individual customers or sites. This is a license for your admin users. So when you add this license to a specific admin user, it unlocks additional features for that admin user, and it works across every customer you're managing, whether they're free version of Nebula, whether they're Plus Pack, whether they're Pro Pack, doesn't matter. These features get unlocked for you. So one of the main things, or the first things you're going to see, is you have a view here where it will show you all of your customers, similar to that view we had earlier where we selected a customer and it showed you all of their sites. It's the same sort of view, but instead it shows you all of your customers and gives you a snapshot view of what's going on at all for all of them. Let me click through. Does it have it now? Okay, I apologize. I just changed the slides here and I think I messed something up. So some of the other features here when it comes to the MSP license is it will give you push notifications and email alerts for all of your sites, even the free ones. It will allow you to create administrative teams. So instead of needing to add individual admins to each of your customers and controlling for the sites, you can set up teams and just assign the team. So that way, if you have a new employee come on, you need to onboard, you simply add them to the appropriate team. You don't have to go through all of your customers that they're going to need permission to touch and add them one by one. So it's a handy tool to use there. We also give you the ability to clone existing customers when setting up a new customer. So you can start from, instead of having to start from scratch, you can start from an already configured customer and then just change the things that you need for that specific customer you are managing. So here's where we get kind of boring. This is our comparison here showing you the differences between free, plus, and pro. Now, the key thing here is, or excuse me, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. This is available online. A much more comprehensive version of this is available online. A Google search should be able to find it. Going to our Nebula information page, it's linked there. But you can always reach out to your salesperson and ask for this, and they will send it to you as a PDF, the full version of this. So it is there for you. But so again, all versions of Nebula allow you to unlimited device management, site management, etc. All of the versions of Nebula give you that zero touch deployment where you just simply plug it in and go. Over the air firmware updates, the ability to schedule firmware updates, using captive portal, using 802.1x and Mac filtering, we can do all of those for you through all versions. So one of the areas where there's differences is where it comes to log information. The free version of Nebula only stores 24 hours of logs in the cloud for you to view. And if you don't log into your customer for, I think, 3 weeks, we will stop collecting the logs until you log back in and enable that feature again for you. Now, if you're using free and you need more than 24 hours worth of log information, we do always support syslog server. So you can always set up your own syslog server and store as much log information as you want on your own syslog server when using the free version of Nebula. But if you want us to store it for you, it's only 24 hours. PlusPack upgrades that to 7 days, so a week's worth of logs are kept in the cloud. And then ProPack, we store a year's worth of logs in the cloud. The next area here where there's differences is in the number of admin accounts. Now, this is the number of admin accounts per organization. And again, an organization is your customer. So for each one of your customers, you can create up to 5 admin accounts to manage that customer. With PlusPack, you can do up to 8. And with ProPack, we have an unlimited number of admin accounts you can create for each of your customers. The next one here comes with cloud authentication. So we host a cloud-based authentication server you can use for 802.1x authentication. You also use that cloud-hosted database if you want to do MAC filtering. So the free version of Nebula, 50 entries in that cloud database. PlusPack doubles that to 100. And then with ProPack, you have an unlimited number of entries in that cloud authentication database. Now, if you want to do 802.1x with the free version of Nebula and you need more than 50 entries, you can always set up your own Radius server to do that. It's only if you're using our cloud hosted database that you're limited to the 50. And then now we get to some of the other features here that are going to be exclusive to Plus and ProPack. Advanced firmware scheduling. So all versions can do firmware scheduling. With Plus and ProPack, it unlocks a lot more features, a lot more granular features. You can set up different schedules based on the type of device. You can set up schedules for individual devices. So that's what that unlocks there for you. We have the ability to do some really nice reports, telling you what's been going on the network for both wireless, wired, your gateway, etc. So in order to use those reports and have them emailed to you, you do need the Plus or the ProPack. It is something that's kind of nice to have set up to be emailed to your customers. We have it so you can load your own logo onto it. So when they get that email, they see your logo when they first open that email report, but just to show them what's been going on the network and that you've been keeping everything up and running nicely. And then that automatic network topology view I was talking about earlier, I showed you the screenshot of, that requires either the Plus or the ProPack license. And then Wi-Fi vouchers. If you want to do paid Wi-Fi to the guest network, that requires the Plus or the ProPack license. And now everything I'm going to go through really quick here, these are all ProPack only features. In addition to storing a year's worth of logs, we also can do with ProPack a audit log or a change log where we track every configuration change made and when. So again, if you're troubleshooting things on your network and you suspect, hey, wait a minute, why is this thing configured this way? You can go through the audit log and say, oh, wait a minute, that was changed 6 months ago. This problem just started yesterday. So clearly that configuration change isn't what caused it, that sort of thing. So it's a troubleshooting tool there for you. We have the ability to be able to set up templates and clone settings from different sites. That requires ProPack. The ability to back up and restore switch configurations, that's a ProPack feature. The ability to open a ticket directly with our headquarters and the engineers in our headquarters, that's a ProPack feature. If you're doing Radius and you need what we call advanced AAA features, that requires ProPack. The ability to use those artificial intelligence and advanced troubleshooting for wireless, ProPack, Wi-Fi health report, ProPack, advanced switch features specifically aimed at the IPTV features, or for our security camera switches, requires ProPack. Some of the advanced VPN settings, ProPack. The ability to do packet captures through the cloud requires ProPack. If you're looking to do collaborative detection and response, that requires ProPack. And again, there's some more features in there. And again, the full feature list is available for you to download as a PDF. But hopefully that touches on some of the main differences between the 3 different versions. Oh, here's the slide I was looking for earlier. So this is just showing you those features that are part of the MSP pack that I already described but didn't have a visual for you. So here's some of those features. A feature I missed earlier when talking about this is the ability to do MSP branding. If you are letting your customers log in and view their sites through Nebula, we can set it up to remove the Zyxel logos and replace them with your company logos. We can remove the contact information, telling people to contact us for support, and you can put in your contact information there. So that's another feature I missed earlier when talking about this. So let's talk a little bit about security licenses. So when it comes to the UTM security gateways, I'm not covering those today. So for those of you that are buying our USG Flex or ATP, they have additional security services like antivirus, anti-spam, content filtering, things like that. So those are separate licenses that you buy to enable those additional security features. And it's pretty much the same between Nebula and standalone mode. So I'm not going through all of the different ones, but there are those UTM license packs available for you. We have gold, we have regular UTM, and we have the NSG UTM. But we do also have some interesting features here that I do want to talk about that are not tied to the gateways. The first one is this connect and protect. This is a license through Nebula for your access points that allows your access points to provide UTM light features on a per access point basis. So if you've got a customer, maybe they're providing guest access, they want to provide a little bit better security for their guests, but for whatever reason, they don't have a UTM gateway and you can't put one in there. Maybe it's above their budget. Maybe they've got a router, a Cisco router that was provided to them by their ISP, and they don't know how to configure it. They don't know if they can replace it. They just don't want you messing with it. This is a way then to add those UTM type features to your wireless users. It is IP based, so it's based on an IP reputation filter, but it can block sources of spam. It can block botnets, phishing sites, denial of service sites, et cetera, for you. We also have a version of this called CNP Plus. So if you're using our NWA 1123 ACV3, or WAC 500 or WAC 500H, you have access to that CNP license. If you're using our NWA 110, 210, or WAX 510, 610, 630, or 650 APs, you have access to the CNP Plus license. It provides those same UTM light security features, but it also provides the ability to set up bandwidth throttling rules based on individual applications and to see data utilization on your network based on the individual applications. So those are on a per AP basis. So maybe you've got a customer who's got a front-facing store where they have guest access, but they've also got offices and warehouse in the back, and you only want to provide those UTM light services to that guest areas, you can just simply buy the licenses for the APs covering that area, and they will have that feature and the other APs will not. So one other thing I want to talk about really quickly when it comes to licenses is pretty much all of the licenses through Nebula have a 30-day free trial. So in the Nebula interface, you can go in and enable the free trials on these. So like if you're interested in that CMP and giving it a test, you've already got one of our access points, you can go in and enable that for 30 days to test it out and see how it works. Same with the Plus and Pro Pack. If you want to play around with Pro Pack, you can enable that. And I think when you first set up a new site, it will prompt you to do it. But if you said no, you can always go back in and do it later. And I believe all of the USG Flex and ATP features also have 30-day trials, which you can enable through the Nebula interface. So I want to talk a little bit about our Nebula architecture, because this is an area where we get a lot of questions. So Nebula Control Center, which is the cloud portion of Nebula, that's the interface you're using to do all your configuration and monitoring and stuff, that is hosted on AWS. So it's not our own server farm somewhere. We are hosting it with Amazon AWS, which is one of the most reliable and robust cloud hosters out there. So that's who we are using for you there. It comes with a 4 nines uptime SLA. So if the cloud goes down, or if the cloud stays up, but your fiber connection gets cut, all of your Nebula devices will continue to function as normal until that gets restored. So you won't be able to change configuration. You may lose some of the logs, but it will not affect the local users while it's down. So I know there's another hosted cloud solution out there which has a habit where that works, but only works for about 24 hours, and then things start getting confused because they still can't reach the cloud. We do not have that problem. So that's not a problem there for you. Another question we get a lot comes with like HIPAA, PCI, was it GDRP out of for those European guys out there? So yes, you can use Nebula with all of those. Nebula does not violate any of the rules for any of those things, provided you've configured your network correctly. And the reason it does this is because there's no user information that's going to our cloud. Our cloud is just there to push firmware, to do configurations, and to store logs, nothing else. So all of your customers' LAN traffic stays on the LAN. All of your customers' WAN traffic goes directly out to the WAN. Nothing goes out to the cloud that shouldn't go to our cloud. So we keep that all separate for you. And another thing I want to bring up here is when it comes to connecting to the cloud, security is a big deal. And so I wanted to highlight here, we did not create our own in-house protocol, which who knows how secure it may be. Some of our other competitors have. We don't do that. Instead, we use netconf, which is an industry standard public protocol. So that's what we are using for the communication between our Nebula devices into the Nebula cloud. So, you don't have to worry about there being mistakes our engineers have made or something on the back end. We're using an industry standard for the communication here for you. One other question we get a lot is, no, you do not have to upgrade the entire network to Nebula. You can add Nebula as many or as few devices to an existing network as you want. You can feel free to mix and match our products with other vendors' products. It's just that obviously if the other products are not part of Nebula, you wouldn't be able to manage them through Nebula, but they have no problem working next to or in line with all of our Nebula compatible devices. So just as a summary here before I get to some of the questions, what is the benefits of Nebula? It's simple and easy to use. It's easier to start. It has unlimited scalability. You can add as many customers and devices as you want at any time without having to worry about hitting certain site license rules and jumping up in fees, things like that. Super easy to set up, super easy to configure, very little time between when you start and when things are up and ready. Have easy visibility of all of your customers and all of their sites. It's easy to jump between them, makes it easier for you to support them, and it's pretty easy for you to sell. Our licenses are cheap, they're easy to apply. So that's the benefits there of Nebula. And for those of you that are interested in it, you can reach out. If you're one of our partners, if you're already an approved partner, you can reach out to your salesperson. They can hook you up with, I think, a 60-day demo kit. Also, any of you can log into Nebula at any time, nebula.zyxel.com. And there is a button with a free demo. So you can just click that demo, and it's a live demo of several different hotels around the world that are connected to Nebula. So you can't change the configurations, but you can poke around and play with it at any point you want. Some of those sites are Nebula Pro. So, if you want to play around and see what some of those Nebula Pro features are, the demo will let you take a look at those, even if you don't have a Pro site set up for yourself. And then lastly, most of our webinars, including today's, are being recorded. So those are uploaded to our YouTube. Zyxel is a huge multinational company. So there's lots of different Zyxel channels there for the different regions. Ours is called Zyxel America channel. That's where you will find the recordings of our webinars. We also have a lot of best practices videos. We have video case studies on there for you. And then if you use LinkedIn, you can connect to us as Zyxel US channel. And with that, we'll now get to those questions that we've got. So Stephen here is asking, I see Zyxel One Connect, Nebula Mobile, Zyxel Rover, Zyxel Air. Will you cover which ones we should need? So Zyxel One Connect is a series of tools for when you're not using the cloud. It's software that will discover devices on the net or Zyxel devices on your network and provide you links to be able to easily get to the GUI for them. Some cases you can update firmware and things like that through this local tool that you will run on a laptop on the local network. So Zyxel Nebula is its own separate thing from that. Nebula Mobile is just the name for our mobile app. So it's a mobile app for Android and iOS, specifically for phones. It does not work on tablets. And it's primarily designed as a tool for for installers. So that's what you would use to scan those QR codes to add devices to your Nebula networks. It also gives you the ability to photograph the installation and add that into the app. So again, if someone needs to go on site down the road and they need help trying to find where you've installed certain pieces of hardware, they can pull up their Nebula mobile app and see the photo of where you installed it to make it easier for them to find it. The Nebula mobile app also gives you push alerts. It will show you snapshots of the key features of what's going on in all of your different customers' networks. So if you need to log in and just take a quick look at something, it can do it for you. There is some basic configuration options in there, but our Nebula hardware has a lot more features than you can really easily configure through a mobile app. So most of your configuration duties should be done through a web browser, and our web interface works great on desktops, but it's also been designed to work good on tablets. So if you're using a tablet, don't try to use the mobile app. Just log into a web browser into Nebula, and for most tablets, it should work just fine for you to do your configuration there. I have no idea what Zyxel Rover is. I have never heard of Zyxel Rover. Let me see what that is. Sorry, guys, just let me see what this is. I think Zyxel Rover is something from the service provider side of things. For those of you, for our internet service provider customers who buy our CPE, I don't think it's anything for the channel side of things. And Zyxel Air was just a version of Zyxel One for our wireless APs back in the day. So anyways, I hope that answered the bulk of those questions. Steven's asking, how do I verify if we have the MSP license? So when you log into Nebula, on the top left, there is an MSP portal button. If that MSP portal button is not there or does not work, that means you don't have an MSP license on your account. You can also go in and look at your license inventory, and it'll show up under your license inventory as well. And then Jay is asking, does Zyxel have an option for scheduled reboots separate from the firmware updates? I don't know the answer to that. It's never come up before. I don't think we do. I don't think we do. I know we can go in on a number of devices and reboot them from the cloud. I don't think there's any schedule for doing reboots. Now, if you're using our security switches, we have not that, but we have a related feature I'll just talk about real quick. So our 1350 series of Nebula compatible switches, those are ones that are designed specifically for the IPTV space. So one of the things they can do is they can automatically power cycle PoE connected devices to the switch. So we've got a configuration in there where you can use LLDP for IP cameras. But if you're using non-IP cameras, you're using access points or phones, and you want those to reboot, you can set them up to do ping. And so they will monitor either using LDAP or using ping to make sure the device connected to it is up and operating. You can choose how often to test and how many failures before you reboot the device. So once that happens, it will power cycle the device to reboot it automatically to get it back online without you needing to manually do it. So probably not exactly what you're asking for, but something that maybe you want to reboot certain devices specifically because you want it's because you want to actually reboot the connected devices. Also on those 1350 series switches, we have the ability to do configuration changes. And when the device reboots as part of the configuration change, it will continue to provide PoE power through the reboot cycle. So when you're buying the devices, how do I make sure? Sorry, this is for Stephen. When buying devices, how do I make sure I have the correct license? So basically, I'm assuming you're talking about Nebula stuff. So all of our access points or all of our devices are either Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. So you just look for that terminology. It's on the price list we put out there. It should be on the data sheets for the product. If in doubt, talk to your sales guy. They can provide you that slide earlier, which showed you all of the devices in each mode. So there's only two. There's those that are Nebula Flex, which do not include any license. You can then add the Plus or Pro license to those devices. Or if you buy a Nebula Flex Pro device, they will come bundled with 1 year of Pro Pack. So for instance, if you've bought one of those, but you need Plus Pack, because that customer is using Plus Pack, you will still need to then buy a Plus license and assign it to it. If you bought an NWA 110 and you need Pro Pack, you simply buy the Pro Pack license and add it because it does not include one. For the CNP licenses, those can be purchased separately. We do sell the NWA 1123 ACV3, the NWA 110 and 210 as CNP bundles. So they are a separate part number. So for instance, the NWA 110 is normally sold as an NWA 110AX. There is also an NWA 110AX CNPP is I think the part number that includes that CNP license with it. But for anything that you've bought that doesn't have the license bundled, you simply you buy the license separately and add it in through Nebula. So ProPack and CNP Plus are completely different things. There's no relation. There is no product that comes with both Plus Pack and CNP Plus. So the only devices that we have the bundles with CNP Plus are, again, those NWA models. All NWA models are Nebula Flex, so they do not come bundled with ProPack. And then none of our products that do come bundled with ProPack include are available with a CNP license with them. So Steven's asking if I want to add ProPack, do I need to go through Disty or buy from the portal? Up to you. So the traditional way we have sold our licenses is through distribution. And as I said, if you log into the Nebula interface, it can give you a report which you can pass to distribution, which will list the types of licenses you want to buy and the quantities. We also, though, have an online marketplace and an online for end users and an online marketplace for those of you that are partners. So that is linked directly through the Nebula interface. So if you want to buy it through the Nebula interface, you can. I would say if you are in general, it is cheaper to buy through distribution. Obviously, that's going to come down to which distributor you're using and what tier of partner you are, but in general, it should be cheaper for you. If you are an end user, it should be cheaper to buy the license generally through one of our resellers. Again, it just depends who the reseller is and how much markup they're going to do, but we do sell through Marketplace for end users, and we sell through Circle for those of you that are partners. If you are a partner, you're part of our Zyxel partner program, and you haven't been set up with Circle, reach out to your salesperson and have them set you up with Circle, which will then get you your partner discounts through the portal. But again, even with those partner discounts, it should be generally a little bit cheaper to buy through our distribution partners, but obviously buying it through Circle is quicker, it's easier, and with the Circle integration, it can automatically then basically assign those licenses directly into Nebula. You don't have to import them manually. So whatever works out best for you. Let's see, are there any other questions here? I think that's it. I'll stick around for just another minute, but if you do have some other questions or something pops up later, just reach out to your salesperson, Jacob, Andy, David, Try. Just pass the question to them. They'll get you the answer, or they'll put you in touch with me to get the answer to the question. Just to highlight for you, we do webinars on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So the Thursday webinars are kind of like today's. They're sort of lightweight overview type presentations. Our Tuesday presentations is when we normally do a little bit more in-depth dives on stuff and are more configuration focused or more specific technology focused presentations. But just about every Tuesday and Thursday we have one. And again, most of those are recorded and put in YouTube. So if you missed one you wanted to see, it'll show up in YouTube a day or two later. Or if you're not patient, you can just watch the previous one. Most of these webinars that we're doing, we do the same webinars every month or every other month. So there's a past version of it probably sitting on YouTube for you to watch if there's none there. I've got no questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you in one of our future webinars. Thank you.